Can I just skip to the end and say, oh, huge shock, the oversimplistic solution isn't actually a solution? Okay, everybody, so I really need to stop saying that I'm done talking about certain things or I don't plan to do future videos on certain things, because I swear every single time I do that, something ends up happening, usually in my own comment section, that makes me go, crap, I do need to address that now, don't I? Thus is the case with the concept of separating the artist from the art. It should not come to anybody's surprise that the reason that I feel the need to talk about this is because of J.K. Rowling. But as with the last few times I've brought that up, I really don't want to dwell on her specifically, but recognize that she and the discourse and conversation around her as the impetus for this. So when I did my video talking about where Harry Potter is going to continue to fit in my life and on this channel, I saw a lot of comments that were variations of, well, we need to separate the artist from the art. And it wasn't so much the sheer volume of them, but the high percentage of those comments that presented it like, oh, well, you just separate the artist from the art. This is why I always separate the artist from the art. Treating it like it's a cure-all, like it's a fix, like it gets rid of the problem. I can't tell how serious people are with how flippant you're using the idea of separate the artist from the art, but you can't actually do that. The first thing is there were some people in comments who seemed to be taking the reason that we need to separate the artist from the art is because if we don't, then we are in a situation where everything eventually gets canceled. We're not allowed to read anything or take in any art by anyone because everyone's human and everyone is flawed, and as those flaws get exposed, we'll never get to enjoy anything ever again. Now that's a false binary. You give me a binary where either we completely ignore the artist or we must get rid of everything, and I'm going to say, no, the binary doesn't work. Big shock coming from me, breaking a binary. That entire thing, that's hyperbolic and that's nonsense. Only people with no concept of depth or nuance whatsoever would claim that. So you need to banish that idea from your head, that if we don't separate from the artist from the art, then we can't enjoy anything, ever. And I will kind of circle back onto you're taking in an enjoyment of these things in a little bit. But that's the first thing. Next up, I need to clarify something, because a lot of folks in the comments also seem to be equating separating the artist from the art, which I don't think you can do, with death of the author, which is something I support very highly. While these are two concepts with a fair amount of overlap philosophically, they're not actually the same thing. So what death of the author is, it's the idea that the originator of a piece of art, their interpretation of the art they create is no more valid than anyone else's, and their interpretation of the work does not supersede or invalidate the interpretation of anyone who partakes of that piece of art. Like, as an example, if you were to read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the author of that, C.S. Lewis, wrote it very strongly as a Christian allegory. Those themes are all over the book. They're very clear, but if you read that book and your interpretation of the work is that it's not about faith or religion, but it's actually about broken family units, and Aslan is meant to represent unity and putting in the work to be together, whereas the White Witch represents the fracturing of the family dynamic and how that splintering can poison things and force things apart even further. Death of the Author says you are allowed to have that interpretation of the work, and just because it isn't the interpretation that the original author, that C.S. Lewis, had, doesn't mean you don't get to have that. You get to have that because that is your experience. That's death of the author. Now, what death of the author doesn't do is it doesn't address anything about who the author is as a person. It only deals with interpretations of the work that that author produces. And this is why it's not the same thing as separate the artist from the art, because pretty much anytime anybody invokes the idea of separate the artist from the art, what they are advocating that you do is to not think about the person behind the art. It's not about their interpretation of the work. It's about ignoring who they are and only looking at the art in and of itself. So while that and death of the author are philosophical cousins, they're not actually the same thing. And that is why I can be in favor of one and not the other. So there's a couple of problems with separating the artist from the art. First off, it treats art like it exists in a vacuum, like it's something that was just there. It was always present, and who created it is irrelevant. And that is a very odd way to think about anything, because no piece of art just exists. Harry Potter was not a story that existed out in the universe that happened to be channeled through a vessel named J.K. Rowling, but could have come from any other source because it exists in a vacuum on its own. Now, I'm not claiming that anybody actually believes that to be the case. I know they don't. But to try and separate the artist from the art is to treat art as if that is the case, as if it doesn't have a source, as if it doesn't have a meaning, as if it doesn't have influences and background, good features and bad, that are instilled in it from the person who created it. And to me, first off, that's a very naive and kind of disrespectful way to consume art. Any art, whether it's art you like or art you don't. And one of the things that's really frustrating about this for me is people tend to invoke it when they want to take part in a piece of art that they enjoy, created by a person who they take issue with. Especially in the back of my head when I know you won't do that for a piece of art you like, created by a person who matches your moral values more closely. You're not going to separate that from the artist, but you will for this. So it's not about actually trying to enjoy the piece of art unto itself, the way some people will claim that it is. It's about trying to placate your own conscience. And it's a cheat. An artist's beliefs, whether they are as evident in the text and as allegorical as in something like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or if there is no intentional projecting of the author's beliefs in the narrative or the characters, regardless, their beliefs, their worldviews, their upbringing, their way of thinking and seeing the world is why the story exists in the form that it does. The art does not exist absent the artists. Now, I know that this is a fact that, especially if you find out things about an artist that you don't like as a person, makes things uncomfortable. And I understand that that is not pleasant, and that's not a nice thing to go through. But I honestly think it's something most of us need to go through. It's part of being an adult. Like, I'll give a pass to kids reading Harry Potter. I don't have expectations of them to have grappled with the issue of J.K. Rowling's transphobic beliefs. I don't expect a 9-year-old to grapple and have come to terms with that. I'm not even entirely sure I'd expect a 19-year-old to. I'd like to, but I'm not sure I can set it as an expectation. But a 29-year-old, 39, up, you don't get to just duck out on being a mature consumer of art because it makes you uncomfortable. And the sad reality is that coming to terms with some of the people who created pieces of art that you like might mean you don't enjoy that piece of art anymore. It may in fact taint it for you. And that sucks. And look, I stand by what I said before. I have not gotten rid of my Harry Potter items. I have not stopped reading Harry Potter to my daughter. But my own personal enjoyment of those things is less. So I know that it sucks. I've made the choice to hold on to these things in the way that I am choosing to do so, regardless of that, because they do still have value. It is tarnished, but tarnishment does not make it worthless. Again, it's not a binary. Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean we should throw it away. But you may also end up coming to the decision that you need to. And that's fine. That would be a mature moral choice. So part of what frustrates me when I see people make the argument for separate the artist from the art is that when I made my video about Harry Potter, that was not something that was done spur of the moment. And my point in that was not, I'm never going to think about who J.K. Rowling is. I had internal debates and conversations with friends and people who mattered to me, trying to figure out how I was going to move forward. I didn't toss it off as, oh, we'll just separate the artist from the art in order to avoid having to do that. Because that is immature, and I would argue even irresponsible to yourself and to the appreciation of any piece of art. Life is complicated, and being an adult means not ignoring and ducking out and avoiding for your own comfort the complications. And that sucks. Being the adult sucks. I know that. But you still need to do it. For yourself, for your growth, for your appreciation of things, for your understanding of anything. How can you claim to appreciate a piece of art if you are ignoring where it's coming from? And if by learning to come to better understand where it comes from, if it makes it harder for you to enjoy that, then that is part of the complicated reality of life. And I'm sorry, but you don't get to just duck out on that because it makes you uncomfortable. That having been said, I personally am of the opinion that nobody, not me and not anybody else, has any business telling you how to process and what conclusions to come to. Because if you go through all of this, if you come to terms with the faults in the either personhood or actions or beliefs of someone who created a piece of art that you love, if you go through all that and come out the other end still finding a way that you are comfortable continuing to enjoy that art, I don't have a problem with that. So long as I know that if somebody asks, why do you still partake of this art, that you can answer it, that you can explain, because it connects to me in this way, because it has this high value, and I understand the other issues, but this means so much to me. Where I will get irritated with you is if your answer is just, I don't think about it. And that's what saying, I separate the artist from the art is. It's going, I'm not going to think about it. And that, I think people kind of do have a right to get annoyed with you at. Not to be rude. Nobody should be being rude to anybody. But to get annoyed with you. If when the question comes up, how are you still conscientiously partaking of this piece of media, your answer is, I just don't think about it. Well, that's not okay. You do need to think about it. And if you come to the conclusion that you can still partake of that media, okay. But do the work Don't put it off because it's hard, because you're disrespecting the work that you claim to be enjoying, because you are failing to appreciate its origins, because that is part of appreciating a piece of art fully. And if it truly means that much to you, why would you ignore that? It is disrespectful to the people who are hurt by that artist if their actions or their beliefs or their statements have caused harm. You are saying to those people, I am choosing to not think about that. And again, this is not me saying you can't partake of this art. I said at the beginning, this is not a binary. This is not this person's problematic, you can never enjoy their art again. Whether or not you can enjoy their art again, that is up to you. And that's what I talked about when I did my video on problematic creators. Separating the artist from the art is not a solution. It is a choice to avoid having to think about things. It sure as hell is not a solution. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a comment, like, subscribe. Whatever your thoughts are, just keep them civil down in the comments section. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. You can help me out by going to Patreon and helping me keep this entire thing going. And of course, I have merch and I have other social media things for you to check out as well. But most importantly, just be sure that you be safe, be well, and be kind.